So we are here about to jump into the 2025 VGC World Championships between James Evans and Giovanni Cischke. Now, this is going to be an incredible match. I did do a bit of a breakdown on this in the last video last night, but I am going to lean slightly towards Giovanni today. I do believe that the Fluttermane and Chiyu on his side of things will have that little bit of extra speed control, which will cause James a bit of issues here today. But of course, James rocking the Calyrex, rocking the Crowdon, the Incineroar, Reggie Bolt, Brute Bonnet, and Landorus, an incredibly powerful Sun Core here. Of course, Caridon paired up with that Ghost Restricted has been an absolute menace throughout the season. Of course, Incineroar, one of the two best Fire Dark types in the format. A lot of people would say it's the best, but my go-to is on the other side of things. Of course, Brute Bonnet, the shock of this tournament, obviously a fantastic partner here with the Caridon. Incredibly strong in this upcoming matchup as well for both trainers. I definitely expect to see both players bring these mons today. Again, I did a breakdown last night. If you want to see, I guess my full thoughts on it, you can go check it out. I believe James Evans will not bring the Landorus today. I think there is a chance the Raging Bolt comes, but on James' side of things, I'm expecting to see the Caridon, Calyrex, Incineroar, and the Brute Bonnet. Over here on the other side, we have Giovanni Cischke's team. Now, of course, another very strong Caridon team here, paired up with the other Ghost Psychic Restricted, being the Lunala. Giovanni here does have a bit more of an offensive team as well. He has that Life Orb Caridon, he has that Meteor Beam, Power Herb set on the Lunala. Of course, the Choice Scarf, Chiyu, and Fluttermane, which I believe in this set are going to be very, very crucial, right? They are going to be the two fastest Pokemon in this matchup. Of course, the Brute Bonnet, we mentioned it before, incredibly strong in this matchup. Very, very good into the opposing Calyrex. And of course, also really good into the Incineroar that does not have access to the Flare Blitz. And we also have the Ursaluna on Giovanni's side of things. I definitely think Gio could play towards a Trick Room mode today. Again, it should be the slowest Pokemon in this matchup. And a Ursaluna in Trick Room it's almost like having another Restricted on his team. But yes, this is a very, very powerful team from Giovanni. I'm really curious to see how he does want to play this, because I do think it kind of feels like, of course, you want to bring your Caridon, you want to bring your Lunala, but I feel like the Chiyu, the Fluttermane, and the Brute Bonnet all really want to come to this game. And the Ursaluna, while it probably is the least likely to get used in this set, I do think there is definitely a chance where you bring it and you build a game plan around it, trying to get up that Trick Room and sweeping through. Here we are, jumping into Game 1 of the 2025 VGC World Championships. On James Evans' side of things here, we have the Incineroar paired up with the Brute Bonnet. And of course, on Giovanni's side of things, we have the Chiyu and the Fluttermane. Flutterfish, one of my personal favorite combos, and it is unreal for me to see them here on the final stage of what is likely the last World Championships here on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Now, again, we're actually in the spectator mode here, so we do not actually get to see what either trainer is locking in here too, which I think is going to be really interesting, right? We don't actually get to see which one of our what moves one of our trainers is going to pick here, but likely right now there is probably a fake out on that Incineroar, likely coming into that Chiyu slot, and of course a Spore coming into either slot here. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Gio kind of wants to play this. Of course, we know there is Terra Water on that Brute Bonnet, right? Terra Water would allow it to live something like a Heat Wave plus Moonblast combo here. Of course, again, we mentioned that Incineroar, it's on the board, Can a Focus Sash Floodbane pick up a Brute Bonnet with just a Moonblast? Normally I'd say no. Beads of Ruin makes it probably a bit more likely. We are going to see the Brute Bonnet here, though, go just straight for that Terror. Of course, as I mentioned, very, very scary, right? Even if you fake out that Chiyu, there is no guarantee here you live that Moonblast because of Beads of Ruin. We are going to see the fake out here come into the Chiyu, so a good call here by James Evans. Of course, Giovanni still in a pretty good spot. We are going to see that Moonblast come out here into the Brute Bonnet, and oh my god, that did a lot of damage. Man, yeah, that definitely needs the Terror to survive that. That was incredible damage coming out of the Fluttermane there. The Spore, though, does go into the Chiyu here, kind of buying Gio just a little bit of time. Now, there isn't too much damage on this board, but right now, one thing Giovanni is going to have to look out for is that Choice Scarf item, right? He needs it in the back late game for this Calyrex potentially to outspeed it. Of course, if he does manage to get up the Sun on the Caridon, there is always going to be the option there of the Fluttermane outspeeding here. Of course, with the Focus Sash as well, it is able to live any one attack. I do think this game, though, will come down to which one of these two trainers here can get up the Flame Charge. It's going to be very, very important late game. If both trainers here bought the Caridon, which I believe they should, who gets that bit of speed control? Whose Caridon can basically set up and then eventually outpace the other trainers? Now, of course, in saying that as well, I believe from previous sets, from what we have seen from both of these trainers, I believe Giovanni is very likely running a Jolly Caridon here with that Life Orb item. And we are going to see the Sucker Punch. They're coming into the Fluttermane slot. They're trying to break the Focus Sash potentially there. Very, very good switch there for Giovanni. Of course, a potential Spore coming into that slot as well. And there is that knockoff into the Chiyu. That's what we mentioned before. You know, losing that choice scarf here could be very, very devastating because now all of a sudden, Pokemon like Landorus, Koraidon, and Calyrex Shadow Rider all potentially could outspeed this Chiyu. Now, of course, I doubt all of them are coming, but that Calyrex Shadow Rider and Koraidon having that extra bit of speed control over the Chiyu here could be very, very important. Now, of course, Brute Bonnet, it feels a little bit weaker on this board state now, right? You can't really, you know, Seed Bomb either of these monsters. They both resist it. They also both resist the Sucker Punch here as well. And, you know, Chiyu's already asleep. And, of course, Brute Bonnet here is a grass type. Therefore, it can't be slept. Another big thing here for a Geo as well is that Brute Bonnet slot is pretty free to spore. Of course, baiting out that Terra means you can put it to sleep now. And it means anything that potentially switches in the back will also go to sleep. And if my memory serves me correct, I believe James Evans also is not running safety goggles on his Incineroar here as well, which is, you know, going to be very important, right? Giovanni here can just start clicking Spore with his Brute Bonnet. We are going to see another Spore there into the Chiyu, of course, trying to pick it up there on the potential first turn wake up there. The knockoff coming in, taking out the Citrus Berry there on Giovanni, but there we see the Incineroar does go to sleep. A very, very good turn there for Giovanni. Didn't lose too much, of course. Losing that Citrus Berry is a little bit annoying. But in a potential late game when Calyrex Shadow Rider could be on the board when that one drops below half HP, it's not the end of the world. Of course, having Unnerve on Calyrex does mean that Brute Bonnet potentially couldn't eat its berry in the late game here. Now, the big question here is, can Giovanni's Chiyu wake up? You know, it's pressuring a lot of damage. Of course, this is a Chiyu. Even though both of these monsters do resist that Heat Wave, it can still do quite a bit of damage to both Pokemon. And of course, as well, Dark Pulse into that Brute Bonnet potentially could pick up a KO, but we are going to see the Koraidon switching in here. If there is no Spore into that right slot and Chiyu does wake up, a Heat Wave right now could do ridiculous amounts of damage right now. And Incineroar stays asleep there, which means... What did it click there? It had to have gone for a Helping Hand. It went for a Helping Hand there into the Sucker Punch. It fails, but the Chiyu does stay asleep. Now, again, a very, very good position here for Giovanni. A close combat actually should pick up a KO onto both slots. Of course, we do know there is no Terra available anymore. The question is Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back? And if so, which slot does he switch it into? Right now, I think a Flame Charge for Giovanni does seem pretty safe, right? You could just look to Flame Charge that Brute Bonnet. You know, if the Chiyu wakes up and it gets off a Heat Wave, fantastic, right? You know, Heat Wave plus Flame Charge should be enough to get it done. Of course, a potential Helping Hand Sucker Punch could also come out here into that Chiyu slot as well, which could potentially pick up the KO. But we'll have to wait and see exactly what these two trainers want to do here. Of course, there's always that option of just saying, hey, hopefully Chiyu stays asleep. Hopefully he does go for an option like that Flame Charge there, and then potentially a Spore. And we are going to see the Incineroar here. It wakes up. It gets that Helping Hand boost. Is there going to be a Sucker Punch into the Chiyu slot here? There will be, and it will go down. Chiyu got to do nothing in this game. Turned one Fake Out into Spore, and then it slept through and just, you know, it got removed just from a couple of Sucker Punches and knockoffs there. And there's that Flame Charge we were talking about. Getting that +1 speed there is going to be very, very crucial. There is a bit of Rocky Helmet chip though coming in there with that Life Orb, so that is going to be quite a bit of HP off the Koraidon here. Now the question is, what does Giovanni want to bring in? He's going to opt for his own Brute Bonnet here. I do really like this, right? You have the option for Spore now. Of course, you can redirect anything coming out of James's side here. But most importantly, you don't lose that Focus Sash on your Flutter Mane to something like a Sucker Punch, which is going to be very, very important here. Now, we are just going to see both of our trainers going to think here. Again, Brute Bonnet can threaten a Spore into both slots right now, and Koraidon threatens a KO into both here with a close combat. So, it's going to be really interesting here. Does James Evans, you know, does he predict a close combat into either of these mons and, you know, potentially switches into something like that Calyrex Shadow Rider? And does Giovanni just double it and say, hey, I'm going to close combat and Spore that exact same slot? You know, if you switch into Cali, okay, you know, I don't do any damage, but I do put you to sleep. So, this is going to be... It's going to be interesting here. Giovanni, you know, he's got a lot of options, right? He's threatening a lot of damage right now on the board. Even something like a Flare Blitz into the Brute Bonnet probably isn't too bad. From this range, I don't want to say it might KO. Oh, we are going to see the Brute Bonnet switch out anyway here. Of course, the defense boost there does make things a little bit interesting. The Calyrex is going to come in now. Of course, do keep in mind, this is a +1 speed onto this Koraidon, though, on Giovanni's side of things. You know, he did get that Flame Charge up a little earlier. And there's the close combat into Koraidon. James Evans celebrating that. He is incredibly happy to see that. The parting shot here will come out into the Brute Bonnet here, which means this should just be a pretty free switch in. Back into likely his own Brute Bonnet here. Potentially also his own Koraidon now as well. question is, what does James want to do, right? The Pokemon coming in like right now, potentially getting spored, right? There's a chance that a spore went into that Incineroar slot here. It is also good to mention as well that we do know the Incineroar on James' side of things is faster than the Brute Bonnet, therefore it cannot outspeed it and get off a spore, you know, sometime here in the end game. But the big question is, what does James bring in? Again, the Koraidon right now, it could come in, it could eat any attack from this Koraidon, and it could just, you know, potentially sit there and deal quite a bit of damage. But again, you know, there could be a spore coming into that slot. And if Giovanni does potentially spore something like a Koraidon on the Switch, it feels really, really bad. But we are going to see Brute Bonnet the Sleepy come in here. We'll get that photosynthesis boost. Gets that defense buff there, meaning it can live something like a Flame Charge. And there is a spore, you know, into Brute Bonnet the Sleepy. That's very funny here. But the good news right now for Giovanni is his Calyrex did survive the turn. Now, again, Calyrex in a bit of an interesting position, right? Because it is pretty free just to Sucker Punch that slot right now. You could always go for the close combat into the Brute Bonnet slot here. Potentially Sucker Punch the Calyrex as well, because, you know, you do have that speed control right now, right? The fastest mon on the board is this +1 Koraidon. So a close combat to Brute Bonnet right now could definitely pick up a KO. And then something like a Sucker Punch as well could potentially just drop this Calyrex down to its Focus Sash. But one of the big things right now, too, that you have to keep in mind is, you know, James is without his Chiyu, right? You know, his Koraidon has taken a bit of chip. If it does click close combat, it probably goes down to any attack coming out of this Calyrex Shadow Rider right now. And we are going to see the Terry here. Of course, we haven't seen the last Mon either on James' side of things, so we don't know if it is the Koraidon in the back. It could be the Landorus or the Raging Bolt. But we will have to wait and see as we... Yes, the Terrifier comes out here onto Giovanni's side of things. We are going to see the Protect by the Calyrex. The question is, did Giovanni predict this? Did he go for the Sucker Punch? The Brute Bonnet will sleep. They're likely clicking a Sucker Punch of its own into the Koraidon. But there it is. The close combat comes out. It picks up the KO. And now Giovanni in a very, very commanding position. This was absolutely huge for Giovanni. Having that Brute Bonnet down now means he does not have Rage Powder anymore. He cannot redirect attacks coming out of this Koraidon. And that's very dangerous, right? A lot of the Pokemon in this game could potentially just go down to a close combat on the slot next to the Calyrex here. Of course, we do see the Spore come out there, which, you know, again, the Protect, very, very nice. But the other thing now is, you know, do you start looking at double Protects? Again, you don't have the ability to redirect Sucker Punches anymore, which means if Calyrex wants to attack, it's potentially just going to get Sucker Punch right now. And that's probably not what you want to see if you are, you know, James Evans. But we are going to see the Koraidon come in right now, you know, threatening quite a bit of damage. Of course, it does threaten very, very big damage here into the opposing Brute Bonnet. But right now, I'm a bit worried. Does James's Koraidon live like a Life Orb close combat right now in the sun? It's going to do a lot of damage. And again, there's no way right now to redirect those Sucker Punches. There's no way to redirect the Spore. So both trainers here have quite a lot of options, right? Again, you can potentially Spore the slot. You can throw something like a Sucker Punch into the Cali. The Cali knows there's a potential Sucker Punch, you know. Obviously, it does have that Focus Sash, allowing it to live one attack. But, you know, if you drop down to your Focus Sash with that Fluttermane in the back, you could be in a lot of trouble. Not to mention as well, there's no Terror available on James' side of things either. So if that Fluttermane ever does get to come in, you know, it is likely a timid max set. Therefore, you know, it could potentially just pick up a one-shot into this Koraidon right now. But we are going to see the Fluttermane come in here. The question is, was there an Astral Barrage clicked here? Was there a close combat clicked here? Was there a potential... Okay, and it's a switch. I was going to say, the Calyrex probably doesn't want to attack on this turn. You need to remove that Brute Bonnet before you can opt for an attack here. So this is going to be really, really big right now for James Evans. Can he pick up a KO right now? Could something like a low kick potentially pick up the Brute Bonnet? There is a failed Sucker Punch. Sorry, I said low kick. I meant Collision Course. But here it is. It's going to come out into the Brute Bonnet. This is almost full HP, and that is a one-shot. A very, very big KO for James Evans. But I believe the sun is about to go down. It does, which means the saving of Koraidon here for Giovanni is absolutely massive. The Fluttermane gets to come in for free. And as we mentioned before, there is no Terror available on James Evans' side of things. That Koraidon potentially just gets one-shot right now by a Moonblast. If the Calyrex switches in, its Focus Sash gets broken and then potentially also just outspeed and KO next turn. So this is a really, really rough position for James all of a sudden, because right now, you know, yes, Incineroar, it can click Fake Out into that Koraidon, right, and stall a turn. But what are you going to do on James' side of things? Do you break, you know, do you let your Focus Sash get broken? Do you protect and then just potentially give, you know, Giovanni a double attack on the next turn? This all of a sudden just feels incredibly rough for James. Not having that Terror option just, it makes things quite difficult, I think. there's not too much James can do right now, right? As you know, maybe you've got to predict a close combat into the Incineroar and make that switch out into Calyrex just to buy yourself a little bit more time. You know, I think James really needs to try to position the Calyrex next to the Incineroar, but it's going to be very, very difficult to get, you know, Calyrex in and have Fake Out up on the exact same turn. And we are going to see the Incineroar come back out here. The question is, does James predict this? Does he go for something like a Flame Charge, which I personally believe is very, very likely. As I mentioned, you know, I think the speed control right now for Giovanni, it's really important, right? You need to get that +1 speed so that when this Calyrex does hit the board and there is no protect, the Moonblast will come out and pick up the one-shot on the Koraidon. The question is, what did James Evans click? Is this a collision course? Sorry, a close combat. Is this a Flame Charge? Is it a Flare Blitz? And it is the Flame Charge. And with that, Giovanni has put himself into a commanding position. This is a 1 HP Calyrex, and all of a sudden, both Pokemon on Giovanni's side of things, they're both faster. You know, a Moonblast and a close combat right now just feels super, super free for Giovanni. I don't know what James Evans can do here anymore. Yes, you can fake out that yes, you can fake out the Koraidon, but a Moonblast, a Shadow Ball into this Calyrex just basically pins it. It doesn't get to play the game anymore, and because of that, the close combat coming out of Koraidon here should just pick up the one-shot into the Incineroar on James's side of things here. Oh, this is really difficult. Yes, you've got Fake Out, but Calyrex, I don't know. It feels like you almost have to go for a double protect here, but I mean, I think as long as the Koraidon attacks the Incineroar and as long as the Flutter Mane attacks the Calyrex here, it feels like there's really nothing that James Evans can do. We are going to see the protect come out here. The question is, does a knockoff KO the Koraidon right now? And it's not going to matter. The close combat comes out. It's a one-shot. And with that, Giovanni should have game 1 wrapped up here in the first game of the World Championships. We do see that Rocky Helmet chip come out, of course. The Life Orb will also deal a little bit of damage, but at this point, this is a speed booster Flutter Mane. This is a +1 speed Koraidon. I don't really know what James can do at this point. Both of the Pokemon outspeed. It's on 1 HP, and it is probably not going to be enough to get it done here. And I'm sure the trainers here, you know, they're going to take time to think about game 2, right? They're going to, you know, I'm sure James Evans right now is thinking, damn, okay, we've lost this one. How do we bring it back for game 2? And there is the Moonblast. It comes out. It outspeeds. Calyrex goes down. And Giovanni has taken game 1 here in the final set. Right, here we are heading into game 2, and Giovanni will go with the same lead here of the Flutterfish, the Chiyu, and the Flutter Mane. And of course, on the other side of things here as well, James Evans also leading with the exact same lead, the Incineroar plus Brute Bonnet. Now, you know, turn 1 last game, you know, James went for that really safe play of just going Fake Out plus Spore into the Chiyu. Now, of course, the Chiyu does have Terra Ghost. The question is, could we see something like a potential Terra Ghost plus a Dark Pulse and Moonblast into that Brute Bonnet? It would likely be enough to pick it up. Of course, you know, there's always the chance that James Evans here doesn't even go for the Fake Out. He could just look to get that knockoff turn 1 here into the Chiyu, making sure it doesn't have its speed control. You know, James did a great job of mitigating Chiyu's damage there in game 1, right? That knockoff. Oh, we are going to see the Sucker Punch comes out turn 1 here, knocking out taking off that Focus Sash there. The Dark Pulse will deal 50 damage, and that Moonblast will be enough to take the Brute Bonnet on turn 1. This is a really, really big KO for Giovanni here, making sure there is no redirection on James' side of things. But the question is, where does the knockoff come? The knockoff comes into the Chiyu again, taking that Focus Sash. Sorry, that Choice Scarf. So all of a sudden now, Giovanni, he just lost his Focus Sash and he just lost his Choice Scarf. 2 really, really big important items in this matchup here. But in saying that, the Brute Bonnet has gone down turn 1 here, which I don't think is ideal. But in saying that, James Evans has managed to hold on to that Terra, which I think would have been really, really important in the end game last time, right? Having something like that Terra Fire to allow the Koraidon to live the Moonblast would have been awesome. And of course, as well, you know, potentially just having that Terra on the Incineroar to kind of just keep it around a little bit longer could have been really, really nice. Not having a one-shot by that Koraidon's close combat there, but right now, all of a sudden, you know, the fastest one on the board is the Calyrex. Of course, there always is that option here of bringing in the Koraidon, but honestly, it feels really, really dangerous for Koraidon to come onto the board right now. It can't afford to come in and eat an Astral Barrage before it gets up that, you know, the Flame Charge. It's really, really important, I think, that Giovanni safely gets up at least 1. And we are going to see the Flutter Mane come out here, likely going into what I assume would be the Brute Bonnet. And it is obviously bringing a Pokemon here that resists the double dark, sorry, the you know, the knockoff here, also the Astral Barrage, and a Protect on the Calyrex. This could be really, really big here for Giovanni. He's going to get the Snarl off here, which isn't going to do too much damage here to the Incineroar. The question is, what did Incineroar click here? If it clicked knockoff into the Chiyu, that would likely bring... Oh, it's actually just going to be a parting shot. I was going to say that a knockoff would likely bring Chiyu into range of Astral Barrage, but getting that parting shot off there, very, very important. Of course, both trainers here still have Terastallization on their side of things, but this almost just feels like a really safe switch to Koraidon on James' side of things. You know, he has the speed control. There it is. Yes, both of his Pokemon are faster than Giovanni's right now. Of course, there always is this Terra Water option onto Giovanni's Brute Bonnet. But the issue right now is with Chiyu on the board, if you click something like Terra Water, Astral Barrage is just going to deal so much damage to the Brute Bonnet. Like, you can't really afford to do it right now. And again, we have Terra Fire up and available on the Koraidon. Probably not the best move to be clicking right now, but... You know, there is a chance this Calyrex is very, very strong. Something like a Terra Ghost Astral Barrage right now could do insane amounts of damage paired up with a Flame Charge. The question, though, is how does Giovanni want to do this? Of course, you do have the option of Sucker Punch always, right? You have the option of Terra Water onto the Brute Bonnet. How does he want to play this, right? You know, you can always go for something like a Terra Water Spore because... Really, you probably have to double the Brute Bonnet if it does Terra Water here on James' side of things, right? Something like a Close Combat plus Astral Barrage would be enough to pick it up. And I keep saying Close Combat, sorry. James has Collision Course. That is my bad. But something like a Collision Course Astral Barrage, maybe I pick it up through Terra Water because of the Beads of Ruin. And we are going to see one of the trainers here go for a Terra. It is going to be the Terra onto the Koraidon here. Likely just trying to get a bit more damage out of that Flame Charge. I do not think this is enough to pick up the Chiyu from that range, but it will be very, very close. It will definitely be enough with the help of the Astral Barrage, of course. And we are also going to see the Terra Water coming out here into the Brute Bonnet. The question is, what did James's Koraidon click? If this is a Collision Course plus an Astral Barrage right now, I think the Brute Bonnet goes down, but if the Koraidon has targeted the Chiyu here just to try to get up its speed boost, I think the Brute Bonnet will survive, and it will put one of the Pokemon on James's, on James's side of things to sleep. And we are going to see the Flame Charge. This is likely enough to pick up the Chiyu from this range. It will go into the Chiyu, and it will pick up the KO. A massive KO for James Evans there. He gets really good chip there with the Astral Barrage, and he also gets that speed boost here. The question is, though, did he click Spore? And if so, which slot is it into? It is a Spore into the Calyrex here for Giovanni. This is really, really big all of a sudden now. I believe Koraidon is pretty safe for Giovanni to bring in right now. I would assume Koraidon is the last piece. I don't think you bring Lunala into this matchup, so... Koraidon right now could potentially come in, could look to get a speed boost of its own, and then threaten a KO into either Pokemon next turn. Of course, you here also just have the Koraidon on your own side of things. Sorry, the Brute Bonnet on your side of things here. Potentially redirect any attack coming out of the Koraidon. You also have the option as well just to straight up throw something. And it is going to be the Koraidon here. A potential Sucker Punch Close Combat would definitely be enough to pick up this Koraidon if Giovanni doesn't believe the Close Combat itself would be enough. But right now, I think James needs to try to match that speed. I think he needs to try to Flame Charge his Calyrex right now. He needs to break its sash, and he needs to get +1 speed on his side of things. He knows that James's Koraidon right now should not be able to pick up a one-shot with the Collision Course or the Flame Charge, though. Oh, sorry, the Flare Blitz. So I think a Flame Charge right now into Calyrex is pretty free. You know it's on a guaranteed sleep turn. Even if it switches into the Incineroar here, it is still really, really good. Obviously, this is the first turn to sleep. Calyrex is guaranteed to sleep here. So I think something just like a Flame Charge into Calyrex right now is just super safe for Giovanni. Get that +1 speed. We are going to see the Koraidon on James' side of things here. Go for that Protect. The question is, what did Giovanni click? The Calyrex here does sleep. Does he go for the Flame Charge here? He goes for the Close Combat into the Calyrex. Predicting the Incineroar there to switch in. The Spore will also go there into the Koraidon. Man, you've got to think James probably doesn't believe a Collision Course picks up that Brute Bonnet right now. The buff from the sun, just giving it that bit of extra defense, is going a long way right now. The question is now, can Calyrex wake up? You know, not getting that Flame Charge there, I think, is going to be really, really crucial for Giovanni. I'm sure when he watches this back, he's going to be kicking himself for just not getting that Flame Charge up there onto the Calyrex. Just trying to match the speed, right? Give yourself that advantage here. You know it's a guaranteed sleep turn. You're always going to get that +1 speed in that situation, but yeah, this is really scary. And there it is, the Collision Course. It will come out here into the Koraidon. It's going to do really, really big damage there. That is a lot of damage. The Calyrex will sleep another turn. And what does Giovanni click here? It is a Flame Charge. They're breaking the Focus Sash, getting the +1 speed, putting himself in a very, very good position now. And Giovanni, what did that Brute Bonnet do? It clicks Spore into the Koraidon slot, putting it to sleep there, which is going to be very, very big here for Giovanni next turn. The issue right now for Giovanni is that HP on the Koraidon is getting so low. 45 HP. I mean, if you think about Life Orb plus Rocky Helmet, I'm not sure if this Koraidon can survive 2 more turns. 2 more turns of Life Orb and a potential Rocky Helmet chip coming out of this Incineroar in the back probably would be enough to get it out of here. So the question is, can James Evans somehow get in his Incineroar into an attack that is not close combat? If he can somehow switch it into something like a Flare Blitz right now, which I think is probably really unlikely out of Giovanni, right? Of course, we just saw the Flame Charge there deal 100 damage in the sun. There's probably no reason for James to ever click Flare Blitz anymore for the rest of the game. It's either close combat or it's Flame Charge. We are going to see the sleep there onto the Koraidon. The Calyrex does wake up, though. This is really, really big. They're getting that Protect off. Now, in saying that, though, the Calyrex, I believe it is in range of Sucker Punch here now. We are going to see the close combat come out. It is not enough to pick up the one-hit KO, though. Oh, this is really, really big here for Giovanni now. The Life Orb chip getting him ever so low. The Spore coming out into the Protect, also really, really big there. Because the thing right now for Giovanni is, you know, if he allows this Calyrex to, click an Astral Barrage, it's probably the end of the game. But if he doesn't go for the Sucker Punch, or if he goes for a Sucker Punch on a potential Incineroar switch in here, things all of a sudden get really scary really quickly for Giovanni. Man, this endgame is going to be really, really interesting here. You know, how does James get this Incineroar back onto the board right now? He needs that fake out pressure. But at the same time as well, everything but Incineroar is probably in range of Flutter Mane. As a matter of fact, it is. I'm pretty sure just a Shadow Ball into either the Calyrex, or I mean, I know for a fact a Shadow Ball into the Calyrex or Koraidon here is definitely enough to pick up a KO. So right now, Giovanni, I think he just needs to kind of play for an endgame here where, you know, he needs to close combat the Incineroar, and then he needs Flutter Mane to safely come onto the board. We are going to see the Calyrex switch out here. The question is, did Giovanni go for a Sucker Punch, or did he go for a Spore? Of course, though, we are seeing the switch out there of the Calyrex getting the Unnerve off the board, meaning that the Brute Bonnet gets to eat its berry. Oh, I'm not too sure if James Evans was ready for that. We are going to see, of course, the Intimidate come out, though, into both of these Pokemon. That will definitely mitigate the damage. The Koraidon here, though, does wake up. It does get the Protect off, meaning he can stall one extra turn for Giovanni. But the Sucker Punch here, it will fail. We're not too sure which slot that went into, but definitely would be enough to pick up the Koraidon. And a close combat into the Koraidon will fail. James Evans has managed to get out of this turn alive. Of course, right now, a Sucker Punch into the Koraidon definitely would pick up a KO at this point. Of course, the Incineroar clicking Fake Out into Koraidon probably also is enough to get a KO there. So the question is, if you're James Evans right now, do you get this Koraidon out right now to get the Calyrex back in? Is that too crazy? Do you let your own Koraidon go down right now to a Sucker Punch potentially? Man, both trainers right now are in pretty interesting positions. Of course, Giovanni, you know, should, from what I remember, he has the faster Koraidon right now. So the question is, what does either trainer want to do? I don't think either trainer right now wants to get rid of that +1 speed boost that they have. Of course, the Fake Out, though, into Koraidon, it's likely to pick up a KO at this point. We are going to see it Protect, but even at 28 HP, I don't think it takes a... I'm pretty sure a Life Orb or the Fake Out into Brute Bonnet, though, calling the Protect. This is huge by James Evans, but the Flame Charge does not go off. Oh, if Giovanni just attacked, then he potentially could have had this game done. Again, there is still a Sucker Punch up on this Brute Bonnet. It would be enough to remove the Koraidon from the game. The question is right now, if you're James Evans, do you switch the Calyrex back into the Incineroar slot right now? It feels like that's his only out right now. Like, if I'm Giovanni, I think you just say, I'm going to click Close Combat, I'm going to click Spore into the Incineroar. I'm either, you know, putting that Calyrex to sleep, or I'm picking up a KO. And then at that point, you kind of need the Flutter Mane to come in, but again, as long as this Incineroar is this healthy, I'm not too sure how Giovanni gets through it without a close combat. I think right now, if I'm James Evans, I'm just taking this Incineroar right now. I'm stalling one more turn. I'm just saying, hey, I need you to chip yourself down with Live Orb. I think Giovanni has made that call there as well, though. He said, I don't need that +1 speed. I will take my Koraidon out right now. There is going to be the Protect there by James Evans. The question is, did he fake out the Flutter Mane slot? He knocks off the Flutter Mane. That's a huge KO for James Evans. Oh my goodness, that is absolutely enormous. Of course, you know, Giovanni definitely needed the Sun to clean up the late game here, but the Spore now, it comes out. The question is it too little too late? Giovanni in just such a James Evans now all of a sudden is in a very, very good position. Again, this Koraidon, it can only attack, you know, probably if it attacks the Incineroar one more time, and if it attacks the other slot 2 more times, and I'm sure Giovanni's aware of it at this point. Getting the sun back up, though, very, very important here. Again, the issue here is Giovanni, he has that Sucker Punch, right? He could potentially threaten Sucker Punches into the Koraidon. And then what do you do on the Incineroar right now? You know, again, I think it's very, very likely that we potentially just see another Protect here from Koraidon, just doing his best to stall. Of course, you know, a potential Flame Charge right now does seem big for Giovanni. If I'm Giovanni right now, you're probably going for something like this, the Sucker Punch combo with the Flame Charge. We are going to see the Protect there fail. The Rage Powder will come out, though, just covering a potential attack here from the Koraidon. And what are we going to see on Giovanni here? It is going to be a Flame Charge. It is going to be enough to pick up the KO. And with that, Giovanni should be able to outspeed the Calyrex in the back. But the big thing is, how low does this Life Orb take him? I don't think he's going to have enough HP right now to click 2 more attacks. He's going to lose his HP. The question is, how low is it? I believe it had 20... I think it had... Was it 27 HP before? Yeah, it's down to 11. Yeah, it would have lost 17 HP that turn, so... All of a sudden, Koraidon, it's only got 1 shot left in the tank, but there's no fake out. The close combat into the Incineroar and a Sucker Punch should just be enough for the Brute Bonnet here, but Calyrex has Encore. Does it go for an Encore play and stall out those Sucker Punches? The other big question is, even if that end game does happen here, where potentially Koraidon trades its life for the Incineroar, you know, is there enough HP on Brute Bonnet to potentially live something like a single target Astral Barrage? It's... Oh, this endgame right now, it's so crazy, because the question is, does Koraidon take out Incineroar here, or does it take out Calyrex? Because you know the only move this Incineroar has is knockoff, right? You're in the sun, you've got that boosted defense. You probably don't back yourself, though, to win the 1v1 with Brute Bonnet versus Incineroar, so I think you have to go. Oh, James Evans, he's celebrating there. What's he done? He's gone for the Encore into Giovanni. Giovanni must have either clicked Spore or he clicked the Seed Bomb there. Oh my god, does this mean he's just locked him into the Rage Powder? Oh my goodness. This will give Incineroar 1 turn to wake up. Does he get the knock? Oh, sorry, he didn't get the knockoff there, of course. That was the guaranteed sleep turn, sorry. But now all of a sudden, what do you do here if you're Geo? You're stuck between a hard place and a rock, right? Do you think... I don't think there's enough time, right? Like, you're gonna click Rage Powder at least 2 more times, and at that point, 2 Astral Barrages is gonna get it done. And even then, if you were to take out the Calyrex here with the Koraidon, I don't think the Brute Bonnet has enough to get through the Incineroar. I think James Evans may have just pulled this back. This HP on the Koraidon, man, it's going to cost him, right? Something like a Flame Charge, if he was able to survive, the Life Orb chip would probably be enough to get it done. But James Evans, I think he's done enough to claw this back. We are going to see the Rage Powder, of course. He is Encored in there, which means the Calyrex did go for an attack. What did the Koraidon do? It's gone for the close combat here into the Incineroar. That will be enough to pick up the KO. The defenses drop here, but it does not matter as the Life Orb chip will take out the Koraidon there. The Rocky Helmet too. Oh my god, this is just a double KO right now. The question is though, does Giovanni live the Astral Barrage? Single target 120 base power? I don't know if it can. The Astral Barrage, it comes out. Oh, it's going to do a lot of damage. And it's enough. We are going to game 3. James Evans has pulled it out. My goodness, what a performance. Oh, that is so hype. James Evans somehow, some way pulls it out in the end. And we are going to game 3. Here we are heading into game 3. It looks like both trainers have opted for the exact same lead. We have the Chiyu and the Fluttermane versus the Incineroar and the Brute Bonnet. Now, the question is, how does Giovanni want to play this? You know, James Evans went incredibly aggressive last turn with that knockoff into the Chiyu. I think right now it's really, really important to keep this Chiyu's focus this Choice Scarf alive. Chiyu has essentially done nothing throughout this set. Game 1, it slept. Game 2, it got knocked off and KO'd. I think preserving the Choice Scarf right now on Chiyu is very, very important. But can you really, can you risk something like the Brute Bonnet coming in here? And again, we know with Terra Water, this Brute Bonnet, it's able to live that Moonblast right now. So, there's a lot of different plays here. We are going to see the Chiyu here. It is going to come out. Again, James making a really heads-up play here. He's going into the Brute Bonnet. It's okay if that Citrus Berry gets knocked off. I think he realizes, hey, I need to save this Choice Scarf for the late game. There is also a Protect here into the Fluttermane. Oh, James Evans not looking too happy there. The Fake Out does come into the Brute Bonnet this turn. And a Sucker Punch just trying to take Oh, that's really, really big there. Giovanni just, he's protecting the focus sash. Of course, that sucker punch, we saw it last game. It did just under 100 damage into the Flutter Mane there. So really, really big there for Giovanni, just protecting that focus sash. I think that's so important right now, just keeping it alive for another turn. I do think a knockoff plus sucker punch combo probably is enough to pick up the Flutter Mane from this point. But of course, we have the Brute Bonnet here on the board. It has that Spore. There is nothing that can switch into that Incineroar slot right now that does not want to get slept. And there really isn't anything on this board right now that can damage the Brute Bonnet. It's just, I think on James's side, I think he needs to get this Koraidon in just to deal damage. He needs to force out the Terra into this Brute Bonnet right now if he wants, if he wants a chance, I think, really to break it easily with the Calyrax. We are going to see a Terra here. I believe this is on Giovanni's side of things. Oh, we're going to see a Terra here into the Flutter Mane. It's a Terra Stellar Flutter Mane. If there is I don't think this one-shot's through a Terra Water right now. There is no Terra on the Brute Bonnet. A Terra Stellar Moonblast is coming out straight into the Brute Bonnet, and that's going to be a one-hit KO. James Evans does not go for the Sucker Punch, and the Brute Bonnet just goes down. That is insane damage. The knockoff hit 2 into the Brute Bonnet. Giovanni has saved the choice, the focus sash here, and the Spore. Oh, the Spore into the Incineroar. Oh my god, this is a disaster turn for James Evans. He does not break the focus sash. He loses the Brute Bonnet without getting anything done there, and Incineroar has got at least one turn of guaranteed sleep. All of a sudden, Giovanni's Flutter Mane is in an incredibly good position. The Koraidon here, it does come out, but the issue right now is you've just set the sun. The Flutter Mane is the fastest Pokemon on the board. Yes, you could throw something like a Flare Blitz into this Brute Bonnet right now to KO it, but if you do that, you're not gonna break the sash. You could potentially get put to sleep if you don't do it. This is a really, really good position right now for Giovanni. A potential Moonblast right now also threatening big damage into this Koraidon. It kind of forces the Terra here right now. James Evans, he probably has to go for the Terra, and he probably has to try to start getting up those speed boosts right now, or he's going to be in a lot of trouble. Losing that Brute Bonnet so early, just all of that just to knock off a Citrus Berry feels really, really rough right now. The question is, how does James want to play this here, right? Does he look to bring in the Calyrax right now? I feel like you can't bring in Cali into the Instant slot anymore. You can't really afford to risk, losing your focus sash for nothing, especially when you've just set the sun for the Flutter Mane here. There's still a Choice Scarf Chi-Yu in the back as well. Oh, we are going to see the Terra come out here for James Evans. It's likely going to be the Terra Fire, and it is here into the Koraidon. This just guaranteeing that it can live one Moonblast, also allowing it to deal quite a bit of damage right now as well. The question, though, is do you go for the Flare Blitz just to get the one-hit KO? Or we are going to see the Moonblast, too, coming into the Incineroar. They're doing about 50%. The Collision Course, though, coming out here into the Brute Bonnet. That should be enough to pick up the one-hit KO, and it does. But the issue right now, it's a crit. I don't think that matters, but the issue right now, right, is Incineroar has its guaranteed sleep turn, and you've just given a potential switch in back to the Chi-Yu here. And right now, Chi-Yu will outspeed the Koraidon. I don't know if Koraidon can live a Heat Wave plus a Terra Stellar Shadow Ball with Beads of Ruin right now. It just feels like this is going to be the Flutterfish show. James really, I think James Evans right now, if a Chi-Yu comes out for Giovanni, which I think is really likely, he's going to have to go for like a Protect into knockoff play. That really feels like the only play he needs to. And there is the Chi-Yu, yeah. He needs to get the knockoff into this Chi-Yu right now so that it just doesn't run away with the game here. Oh, this is going to be really scary. There's only a 33% chance right now to wake up for this Incineroar. But Giovanni, right now, I think a Shadow Ball into the Koraidon, a Heat Wave, it's so free right now if you're Giovanni. It's just, if you're James Evans, you're praying this Incineroar wakes up right now. If it doesn't wake up, things are going to be very, very difficult, I think. Both trainers, James is thinking, I'm sure Giovanni right now, he's probably just gone for the Shadow Ball. He's gone for the Heat Wave. I think it's a really, really obvious play on his side of things. Of course, James probably trying to get the wake up. But at 50%, the sun is up. I don't think Incineroar can take 2 Heat Waves right now from 50% HP. That's just how powerful Chi-Yu is here, especially when the sun is up. What are we going to see? Okay, there's the Protect. Again, I think this is the right play, right? If you're James Evans right now, you need to get the choice. You need to get the, you need to get rid of the Choice Scarf right now. But we are going to see that Shadow Ball there, meaning that we are going to lose the Terra Stellar boost here. But the Heat Wave will come out. Will it connect with the Incineroar? It's gonna connect, and that is well over 50, over half the HP that the Incineroar had left there. The question is, does it wake up? And the answer is no. James Evans right now, I think he has to go for a double protect. I don't think this Koraidon can live a Heat Wave into Shadow Ball. This Heat Wave will likely do roughly 40%, and a Beads of Ruin boosted Shadow Ball off a Focus Sash Flutter Mane. There should just be enough to pick up from this range, I believe. Right now, I think James's play, you gotta look at something like a double protect into a knockoff right now and just pray this Chiyu misses the Heat Wave. I mean, your other out, I guess, is just hoping that Chiyu misses. Okay, there is no protect. The Shadow Ball will come out with Beads of Ruin. How much does it do? That's a lot of damage. That's like 75%. The Heat Wave, it double connects. Chiyu picks up the double KO. And Giovanni has just taken a commanding lead. The Focus Sash is still up on the Flutter Mane. There is still a full HP Koraidon in the back. And the Chiyu's Choice Scarf is still up. Even if Chiyu misses an attack here, I don't think the Calyrax has enough here to get through this Flutter Mane. A Shadow Ball right now will drop it to its Focus Sash. The only out maybe here is Ashton Barrage. Like, man, I don't even know at this point. You have to dodge the Heat Wave. You have to drop the Flutter Mane to its Focus Sash. And then, yeah, it's not going to be enough. He gets dropped to 1 HP. The Focus Sash will activate. Does the Chiyu connect? The Heat Wave comes out, and it does! Giovanni is the new 2025 VGC World Champion. Chiyu picking up 3 massive KOs there in Game 3 after essentially doing nothing in Games 1 or 2. That is absolutely huge. Giovanni goes on the offense there in Game 3, picking up just so many KOs. The Flutterfish, how fitting. What a way to potentially end the Scarlet and Violet era. The Chiyu Flutter Mane running through Game 3 of the finals. And Giovanni, what a run. I am so happy. Chiyu is a world champion. Koraidon is a world champion. Gio, massive congratulations.